The tracking station floated in the darkness of space, its sensors always watching, always listening. Inside, Commander Jathic stood before the main display screen, his 4 arms crossed as he supervised the night shift. It was supposed to be quiet. Boring even. Just another rotation monitoring the empty trade routes that stretched through Vraxian territory. Then the alarm chirped. Every head in the room turned toward the sensor station. The young operator, barely 2 seasons out of training, tapped frantically at his console. "Commander, we have an unknown signature entering Sector 7. Jathic moved across the command floor, his clawed feet clicking against the metal floor. He leaned over the operator's shoulder, studying the readings. "Show me." The main screen lit up with a 3-dimensional map of the surrounding space. A single red dot pulsed near the edge of their protected zone, moving steadily deeper into Vraxian territory. No transponder signal. No identification beacon. No request for passage. Identification. Jathic clicked his mandibles together, a habit he'd developed over 20 years of military service. That clicking sound usually meant he was either very interested or very annoyed. Right now he wasn't sure which. The operator ran the signature through their database. Human signature, Commander. Definitely human. Jathic felt his excitement deflate like a punctured air bladder. Humans? Are you certain? Yes, sir. The engine signature matches their primitive faster-than-light drive. Recent emergent species. The Galactic Council classifies them as, well, barely worth monitoring. Around the command center, several crew members chuckled. Everyone had heard about the humans. They'd somehow stumbled onto FTL technology only a few decades ago, probably by accident if the rumors were true. Most species took centuries of careful development to achieve faster-than-light travel. The humans had apparently jury-rigged it together in some backwater laboratory and hoped for the best. That they hadn't blown themselves up was considered lucky. The Council's official report labeled them as curiosity status. Interesting enough to note, not important enough to worry about. They had no political power, limited technology, and their military was a joke compared to established empires. Running into a human ship was like finding a lost child wandering in a restricted area. You'd escort them out, maybe give them a stern warning and send them home. Jathic felt disappointed. He'd hoped for something more exciting. A smuggler perhaps, or maybe even a pirate ship he could chase down. This would be simple, routine work. Deploy the stealth satellites. Let's get a full scan of their vessel. We'll see what they're carrying, then escort them back to neutral space. Yes, Commander. The tracking satellites were Vraxian pride and joy. Invisible to sensors, they could slip through space and position themselves around any target. Once in place, they could map everything, every power conduit, every weapon system, every communication array. The technology had never failed. Not once in 15 years of operation. Within minutes, 6 satellites drifted into position around the human warship, forming a perfect hexagon. The data started streaming back immediately. But something was wrong. The sensor operator frowned at his screen, tapping it as if the display might be broken. Commander, the scans are strange. Strange how? Jathic moved closer. The data is fragmented. I'm getting contradictory readings. Look here, the power signatures don't match the hull size. And the crew complement shows only 180 life signs, but the vessel's internal volume suggests it should hold at least 500. Nothing makes sense. Another operator chimed in from across the room. I'm seeing the same thing, sir. The scans keep changing. One moment I read weapon systems, the next moment they disappear from sensors. It's like the ship is, I don't know, shifting somehow. Jathic studied the readings himself. The data looked corrupted, as if their satellites were malfunctioning. But all 6 couldn't malfunction at once. Recalibrate and scan again. Check the satellites for errors. Running diagnostics now, Commander. While the crew worked, Jathic kept his eyes on the main display. The human ship continued its steady course, moving deeper into protected space. It wasn't speeding or trying to hide. It just moved forward like it had every right to be there, like it owned this stretch of space. That irritated him more than anything else. Before his crew could finish their diagnostics, something happened that made everyone freeze. The human ship changed course. It wasn't a gradual turn. The vessel simply rotated in place, then accelerated hard, directly toward Satellite 3. The invisible satellite that no one should be able to detect. The satellite that was supposed to be completely hidden from all known sensors. The sensor operator's voice came out as a whisper. That's impossible. What? Jathic demanded. They're heading straight for Satellite 3, sir. They can't detect our satellites. No one can detect them. The technology doesn't exist. But the human ship kept moving, adjusting its course with small thruster bursts, zeroing in on the satellite's exact position with disturbing precision. Jathic felt his combat instincts wake up. This wasn't a lost child wandering into restricted space. This was something else entirely. Something that could see their invisible technology. Something that was either incredibly advanced or incredibly dangerous. Maybe both. He straightened up to his full height, his voice cutting across the suddenly silent command center. Bring up 3 Hunter-class vessels from the reserve fleet. Power up weapons systems. Let's see what these humans really are. As his crew rushed to follow orders, Jathic kept watching that single red dot on his screen. The human ship had stopped now, hovering in space near where Satellite 3 floated. Just sitting there. Waiting. Almost like it wanted them to come. The 3 Vraxian hunter ships materialized from nowhere, their cloaking fields dropping away in ripples of distorted light. They'd positioned themselves perfectly, one above, one below, and one directly ahead of the human vessel. It was textbook military formation, designed to trap prey with nowhere to run. Commander Jathic watched from his command station as the hunters powered up their weapons arrays. Their targeting systems locked onto the small human ship, painting it with enough active sensors to fry unshielded electronics. The message was clear: you're surrounded, outgunned, and out of options. The lead hunter captain opened a communication channel, his voice booming across all frequencies. Human vessel, you have violated Vraxian territory. Power down your engines immediately and prepare to be boarded. You have 30 seconds to comply. Jathic leaned back in his chair, expecting the usual response. Most species, when faced with 3 military vessels, either surrendered immediately or started begging for mercy. Some tried to negotiate. A few foolish ones attempted to run, but they never got far. The human ship did none of those things. Instead, its engines flared bright blue, and it accelerated straight toward the hunter blocking its path. Commander, they're ignoring us. The communications officer's voice carried genuine surprise. Jathic sat forward. Repeat the warning. Maybe they don't understand galactic standard. Warning repeated, sir. No response. The human ship kept accelerating, its speed climbing beyond what should be safe for such a small vessel. The hunter in its path held position, weapons charging, clearly expecting the humans to veer off at the last moment. They didn't. Warning shots, Jathic ordered, irritation creeping into his voice. Across their bow. Close enough to scare them. The hunter's particle beam cannons fired. Twin streaks of superheated energy, each carrying enough power to vaporize a small moon, lanced through space. They passed within meters of the human ship's nose, close enough that any rational crew would feel the heat through their hull plating, close enough that the discharge would light up every warning system they had. Any reasonable species would have stopped right there. Surrendered. Apologized profusely. The human ship, designated UNSV Tenacious according to their database, did something that made every crew member in Jathic's command center stop breathing. It dodged. Not forward or backward. Not even up or down. It moved sideways. At full acceleration. Without rotating its hull. Without any visible thruster fire. The vessel simply shifted 30 meters to port in a movement that violated every law of physics Jathic knew. What? The sensor operator started to say. The Tenacious wasn't done. It rolled, then accelerated along a vector that bent at impossible angles, pulling what had to be at least 15 gravities. Any organic crew would have been crushed into jelly against their bulkheads. Blood would have exploded from their eyes and ears. Bones would have shattered. But the human ship kept moving, kept accelerating, pulling maneuvers that should have killed everyone aboard. Chase pattern. Jathic shouted, standing up from his chair. All 3 hunters, pursue and capture. The hunter ships kicked their engines into high gear, their powerful military drives pushing them after the fleeing human vessel. They were faster, bigger, more powerful. This should have been easy. The human ship led them straight into an asteroid field. Sir, they're entering the Kresh Belt, the navigator warned. At their current speed, they'll be torn apart. The Kresh Belt was a graveyard of shattered moons and planetary debris. Millions of rocks, some as small as pebbles, others the size of cities, all tumbling through space in chaotic patterns. Flying through it at normal speeds was dangerous. Flying through it at combat speeds was suicide. The Tenacious dove into the field without hesitation. Follow them, Jathic ordered. The hunter ships plunged in after their prey, but immediately things went wrong. The human vessel wove between asteroids like water flowing around stones, threading gaps that barely existed, pulling turns that should have been impossible. It rolled, pitched, and yawed with precision that suggested either a perfect AI or pilots with reflexes far beyond anything natural. Behind them, the hunter ships struggled. These were military vessels built for power and armor, not agility. They smashed through smaller asteroids, their shields flaring with each impact. Their sensors scrambled, trying to track both the human ship and the thousands of obstacles surrounding them. Hunter 2 has lost sensor lock, the communications officer reported. They're falling behind. Hunter 3 reports multiple shield impacts, another voice added. They're requesting permission to break off pursuit. Jothic gripped his command chair. Negative. Stay on target. A communication crackled through the chaos, broken and fuzzy with interference from all the debris. The voice was human, definitely human, speaking in heavily accented but understandable galactic standard. Vraxian vessels, you really don't want to do this. Last warning. Break off pursuit. The words hung in the air of the command center. Several crew members glanced at Jothic, waiting for his response. He felt his pride surge up like hot acid in his throat. A primitive species, barely out of their own star system, was warning him? Commander Jothic, who had fought in 3 wars and commanded fleets that had brought entire planets to heel. Full engagement authorization, he said coldly. All weapons free. Take them alive if possible, but take them. The hunter ships armed every weapon they had, particle beams, missile batteries, tractor beams, electromagnetic nets. Everything designed to stop a fleeing vessel. Then something happened that made Jothic's blood run cold. The human ship stopped. Just stopped, dead in space, floating among the asteroids like it had all the time in the world. It rotated slowly, deliberately, until it faced the 3 incoming hunter ships. And every single system on that small vessel powered up at once. The energy readings that flooded across Jothic's screens were insane. Impossible. No ship that size, no ship 10 times that size should generate that much power. The readings spiked so high his sensors thought they were malfunctioning. The weapons officer stared at his display, his voice dropping to a whisper. Commander, what are they? Jothic had no answer. He could only watch as the small human ship, alone and surrounded, prepared to fight. The order came down through the chain of command like a hammer blow. All hunters weapons free. Fire at will. Jothic watched as his 3 hunter ships unleashed everything they had. Particle beam cannons lit up the darkness, brilliant streams of concentrated energy that could punch holes through battle stations. Each beam carried enough destructive force to vaporize a small moon, to turn solid matter into superheated gas in microseconds. They all struck the Tenacious at once. The small human ship disappeared behind a wall of energy so bright it overloaded the visual sensors. Jothic shielded his eyes from the glare. When the light faded, he expected to see debris, maybe a few scattered pieces of melted hull plating. The Tenacious was still there. Intact. Undamaged. But that wasn't what made his blood run cold. The human shields hadn't just absorbed the attacks. They were doing something that shouldn't be possible. The energy was moving, flowing across the shield surface in geometric patterns, channeling along pathways that violated every principle of physics Jothic had learned in 40 years of military service. Commander, the beams? His weapons officer started. One of the particle beams reflected back. Not scattered or diffused, but actually bounced back along its original path with almost the same energy it had carried on the way in. Hunter 3 barely had time to emergency boost before its own weapon came screaming back at it. Evasive maneuvers. Jothic shouted, but it was already too late for what came next. The Tenacious opened fire. There were no bright energy beams, no flashy explosions. Just a series of heavy thuds that Jothic felt through his deck plating, transmitted through some subspace vibration. He saw small objects launch from the human ship, solid projectiles, physical slugs of dense metal. They didn't look dangerous. They looked almost primitive compared to the sophisticated energy weapons the Vraxian fleet used. Then they hit. The first projectile struck Hunter 1 amidships. The impact was catastrophic. The Hunter's shields didn't gradually fail or slowly overload. They simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the kinetic energy transfer. The hull buckled, armor plating crumpling like thin foil. Internal explosions rippled along the ship's spine as systems overloaded. Hunter 1 is critical, someone shouted. They're evacuating. Jothic stared at his tactical display in disbelief. A single hit. One projectile had crippled a military vessel designed to withstand sustained combat. What was that? His science officer was frantically running calculations, his claws tapping across his console so fast they blurred. Commander, those projectiles? They're moving at relativistic speeds. A significant fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy is. He trailed off, rechecking his numbers. It's impossible. Nothing should be able to accelerate solid mass to those velocities in such a short distance. Another projectile slammed into Hunter 2, this time targeting its engine section. The Hunter ship spun out of control, venting atmosphere and coolant in great frozen clouds. How much ammunition are they carrying? Jothik demanded. Those projectiles must weigh tons each. No ship that small can carry enough mass to sustain this kind of firepower. The science officer's voice trembled as he answered. Commander, I've completed the deep penetration scan. The Tenacious isn't carrying ammunition in the traditional sense. The entire vessel is compartmentalized into hundreds of independent sections. Every section has its own power, its own life support, its own ability to operate alone. And the weapons? They're using mass from the ship itself. That's insane. They're destroying their own ship to shoot at us. No, sir. They're recycling it. There's some kind of internal manufacturing system. They take mass from non-critical sections, process it, accelerate it, and fire it. Then they recover and reprocess debris from their targets. It's a closed-loop system. They can sustain fire almost indefinitely. A new voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. Female, human, speaking perfect galactic standard with an accent Jothik couldn't place. The voice was calm, almost gentle, like a teacher explaining something to a slow student. Vraxian vessels, we tried to warn you. We're not a warship. We're a human warship. There's a difference. You should leave now while you still can. The distinction seemed meaningless to Jothik, but something in the tone made his combat instincts scream danger. He reached for the retreat authorization, ready to pull his forces back and reassess. His console lit up with an override command before his claw touched the button. The transmission came directly from Fleet Command, encrypted with priority alpha codes. Negative on retreat, Commander Jothik. Dreadnought Crimson Judgment is entering the system now. All units maintain engagement. Capture that vessel and its technology at all cost. This is not a request. Jothik looked up at his main view screen just as reality tore open. The massive dreadnought emerged from faster-than-light travel in a cascade of displaced energy. It was 50 times the size of the human ship, maybe more. Its weapons arrays could sterilize continents. Its shields could withstand sustained bombardment from entire fleets. It was the pride of the Vraxian Empire, a vessel so powerful that its mere presence had ended wars. Surely the humans would run now. Surely they would realize how outmatched they were. The Tenacious didn't move. Didn't flee. Didn't even power down its weapons. Instead, it broadcast a message on every frequency, civilian, military, emergency channels, even the old analog bands that nobody used anymore. Attention all civilian vessels in this sector. Clear the area immediately. Repeat, clear the area. Hostile action has been authorized. This is your only warning. The words were professional, almost bureaucratic, like someone checking off items on a standard procedure list. But underneath that calm surface, Jothik heard something that made his scales crawl. Anticipation. The humans weren't afraid. They weren't even worried. They sounded almost eager. And that's when Jothik understood with creeping horror that everything before this moment had been the humans holding back. The impossible maneuvers, the devastating weapons, the technology that shouldn't exist, all of it had been them showing restraint. They'd been trying not to hurt anyone. That was about to change. Admiral Kreshtal's voice thundered across every communication channel, carried on subspace frequencies that reached across the entire star system. His tone dripped with absolute confidence, the kind that came from commanding the most powerful warship in the sector. Human vessel, this is Admiral Kreshtal of the Vraxian Imperial Dreadnought Crimson Judgment. You have 60 seconds to power down all systems and surrender your vessel for inspection. Refuse and we will reduce you to atoms. There will be no further warnings. On his command bridge, Jothik listened to the ultimatum and felt a knot of worry tighten in his gut. He'd seen what the small human ship could do. He'd watched it cripple 2 hunter vessels with ease. But the Admiral hadn't been there. He hadn't seen the impossible maneuvers, the devastating weapons, the technology that shouldn't exist. The human ship's response came not in words but in action. Multiple hatches opened along the Tenacious hull. Objects began launching out, dozens of them scattering in all directions like seeds blown by wind. Small capsules tumbling through space, their emergency thrusters firing to push them away from the mothership. They're abandoning ship, Admiral Kreshtal said, satisfaction thick in his voice. The primitives finally understand their situation. Target the main vessel. Prepare to capture it intact. Wait. Jathic shouted into his communicator. Admiral, those aren't escape pods. Don't fire yet. But his warning came too late, or perhaps the Admiral chose to ignore it. The Dreadnought's weapons charged up, energy readings spiking to levels that made Jathic's sensors scream warnings. The main batteries swiveled into position, targeting computers locking onto the Tenacious. Then the escape pods deployed. They unfolded like mechanical flowers, panels extending, antennae sprouting, sensor arrays blooming into existence. These weren't life pods at all. They were drones, repair units, sensor packages, communication relays. Engineering equipment, not weapons. Harmless civilian technology that any mining operation or construction fleet might carry. But as they activated and synchronized with each other, something extraordinary happened. Every targeting system in the Vraxian fleet went dark. Jathic's tactical display dissolved into static. His weapons locks vanished. His sensor feeds showed nothing but garbage data and phantom contacts. The drones had formed a distributed network, each one talking to the others, creating an interference pattern that jammed every piece of military hardware the Vraxians had. Targeting offline, his weapons officer shouted. I can't get a lock. On the Dreadnought, Admiral Kreshtal made a fatal decision. Fire anyway. Saturate the area. The Crimson Judgment unleashed its main batteries. Massive particle beams, each one carrying enough energy to crack a planet's crust, carved through space in sweeping arcs. They hit nothing but vacuum, burning through empty space where the Tenacious had been microseconds before. The human ship had moved. Without jamming their own sensors. Without losing track of the battlefield. They could see perfectly while the Vraxians were flying blind. Then the humans fired back. But these weren't the devastating kinetic strikes that had crippled the hunter ships. These were precise surgical shots. Small projectiles moving at incredible speeds, each one targeting a specific point on the massive Dreadnought's hull. The first shot destroyed the primary communication array. The second took out a sensor cluster. The third, fourth, and fifth struck weapons capacitors, overloading them and triggering emergency shutdowns. Every shot disabled rather than destroyed, taking out capability without causing casualties. They're picking us apart, someone screamed on the fleet-wide channel. How are they targeting us? Admiral Kreshtal demanded. They can't see through their own jamming. It's impossible. Jathic stared at his useless displays and suddenly understood. They're not predicting where we are, Admiral. They're predicting where we'll shoot. They know our firing solutions before we do. That's impossible. They've been studying us, Jathic said quietly. From our own tracking satellites. We thought we were hunting them, mapping their technology, learning their weaknesses. But they were doing the same to us. They've been analyzing our weapons, our tactics, our standard combat procedures since the moment we deployed those satellites. They know how we think, how we fight. They've been inside our heads this entire time. The realization settled over the command center like a cold blanket. They'd been so focused on studying the humans that they never considered the humans might be studying them right back. A new communication cut through the jamming, clear, unaffected, transmitted on a frequency the Vraxians hadn't even known existed. A male voice, calm and professional, speaking with the tone of someone who just finished a mildly annoying task. This is Commander Jack Mitchell of the United Nations space vessel Tenacious. Your empire hunts prey, Admiral. We hunt hunters. Every military doctrine you have assumes your enemy will either run away or hide. We don't do either. We can continue this demonstration for as long as you'd like, or we can talk about why we're actually here. Your choice. Silence filled every bridge in the fleet. The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Admiral Kreshtal's voice came back, quieter now, the bluster gone. What do you mean why you're here? There's something worse coming to this sector, Admiral. Something that makes our little disagreement look like children fighting in a playground. We came to warn you, to offer our help, to share intelligence that might save your people. But you decided to shoot first and ask questions never. So here we are. Kreshtal looked at his darkened tactical displays, at his disabled weapon systems, at the small human ship that had casually dismantled his fleet's combat capability in under 5 minutes. His pride warred with reality, and reality won. Commander Jathic, he said slowly. Do you recommend we hear them out? Jathic thought about everything he'd seen, the impossible maneuvers, the devastating weapons, the technology that seemed like magic. Most of all, he thought about how the humans had disabled his fleet without killing anyone. They could have destroyed every ship. They'd chosen not to. Yes, Admiral. I think we should listen. Very well. All fleet units, power down weapons. Maintain defensive posture but cease hostile actions. Kreshtal took a deep breath. Commander Mitchell, we're listening. Tell us what you came to say. The docking procedure took 2 hours. Not because of technical difficulties, but because neither side fully trusted the other yet. The Tenacious extended a flexible docking tube toward the Crimson Judgment's auxiliary port while both fleets maintained weapons powered but not aimed. It was the definition of a tense truce. Jothic stood in the docking bay with a full security detail, watching the airlock cycle. He'd argued against meeting aboard the dreadnought, suggested neutral ground instead, but Admiral Kreshtal had insisted. Pride, apparently, still mattered even after getting your entire fleet disabled. The airlock hissed open. 3 humans stepped through. The man in front was average height for his species, maybe a bit taller, with short brown hair graying at the temples. His uniform was dark blue with rank insignia that Jothic didn't recognize. His eyes swept the docking bay with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd walked into potential ambushes before. Commander Jack Mitchell, the man said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. United Nations Space Vessel Tenacious. Jothic clasped the offered hand briefly, still unused to the custom. Commander Jothic. These are your crew? My senior officers. Lieutenant Amy Reynolds, Tactical Systems. He gestured to the woman on his left, sharp features, dark hair pulled back tight, eyes that missed nothing. Lieutenant Tyler Brooks, Engineering. The man on Mitchell's right was built like he could bend metal with his bare hands, but his expression was calm, almost gentle. Only 3 of you? Admiral Kreshtal had arrived, flanked by his own security detail. Interesting choice. More seemed excessive, Mitchell replied. Besides, if this goes badly, we'd rather not lose good people. They moved to a conference room deep in the Dreadnought's command section. The table was standard Vraxian design, low, wide, meant for species that crouched rather than sat. The humans adapted, pulling up seats without complaint. Mitchell reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out several small data chips, laying them on the table like cards in some high-stakes game. 3 weeks ago, our long-range sensor network detected anomalous signals from this sector. Deep space on the edge of your territory. He activated a holographic display. The image showed wave patterns, energy signatures, readings that looked wrong to Jothic's trained eye. Too regular. Too purposeful. The signature matches something we call the Devourers, Mitchell continued. Ancient machine intelligence. Predates most current galactic civilizations by millennia. They consumed 3 known species before going dormant about 5,000 years ago. According to our xenoarchaeology teams, they're waking up. Jothic leaned forward, studying the data. His combat instincts screamed that this was real. The energy patterns matched nothing in Vraxian databases, but they had a purposeful quality that natural phenomena never possessed. If this threat is real, he said slowly, why not send a diplomatic message? Why risk entering our space and triggering exactly what happened? Mitchell's expression hardened, and for the first time, Jothic saw genuine anger flash across the human's face. We tried. 17 different official channels over 2 weeks. Emergency frequencies, diplomatic corps, trade liaison offices, even your tourism information network. Every message explaining the threat, offering to share data, requesting a meeting. And? Admiral Kreshtal asked. And every single one was ignored or auto-rejected, Lieutenant Reynolds said flatly. Your government's official assessment classified humanity as primitive curiosities not warranting priority response. We weren't important enough to deserve a reply. The words hung in the air. Jothic felt embarrassment creep through him. He'd seen those classifications himself, had even agreed with them. So we came ourselves, Mitchell finished. Because we'd rather be called paranoid primitives than let an entire civilization die because we were too polite to force the conversation. Admiral Kreshtal's scales had darkened with what Jothic recognized as shame. You came with a warship, he said, but the accusation sounded weak even to Jothic's ears. Reynolds actually smiled at that, though it wasn't a friendly expression. With a scout ship, Admiral. The Tenacious is a reconnaissance vessel. Long-range sensors, enhanced communications, extended operation capability. We're designed to go where we're not wanted and gather information. You want to see actual human warships? Mitchell asked. He tapped the communicator on his wrist. Mitchell to fleet. You can come in now. Jothic's personal scanner vibrated with proximity alerts. 3 new signatures appeared on the Vraxian sensor network. Massive contacts emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The holographic display shifted to show tactical data. 3 vessels, each one twice the size of the Tenacious, their hulls bristling with weapons arrays that made the Crimson Judgment's arsenal look almost primitive by comparison. The energy readings coming off those ships could have powered entire planets. "Those are the UNSV Defiant, Resolute, and Indomitable," Mitchell said quietly. "Fast attack cruisers. They've been shadowing us since we entered your space. Standard protocol, scouts never operate alone in potentially hostile territory." Admiral Kreshtal stared at the display, his voice barely a whisper. "You baited us. You wanted us to attack the Tenacious." "We wanted you to listen," Mitchell corrected. "But yes, we predicted you'd shoot first. Most species do. Humanity survived our first contact with hostile aliens by refusing to ever be victims again. Every ship we build can fight. Every crew member trains for combat. Every mission plan includes contingencies for things going wrong. Because the galaxy taught us, very painfully, that strength is the only language some species understand." Jathic pulled up the Devourer data, running it through his own analysis systems. The mathematics checked out. The threat assessment was conservative if anything. This was real and it was terrifying. "This data is legitimate," he said to Admiral Kreshtal. "If even half of what they're showing us is accurate, then we're facing something that could end our entire civilization," Mitchell finished. "Something neither of us can face alone. So here's the real question, Admiral. Can you put aside your pride long enough to work with primitive humans? Or do we both die proud and dead?" The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Jathic watched his superior officer wrestle with decades of ingrained assumptions about humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. Finally, Admiral Kreshtal stood and extended his hand in the human gesture, a sign he'd clearly researched, knowing this moment might come. "We will work together, Commander Mitchell. And on behalf of the Vraxian Empire, I apologize for underestimating your species." Mitchell stood and gripped the Admiral's hand firmly. "Apology accepted, Admiral. Now let's go kill some machines before they wake up enough to kill us."